I was never the kind of woman who snooped. At 62, after losing my first husband to cancer, I had learned to treasure peace more than suspicion. But that morning, standing beside Jake's silver Mercedes parked along Brooklyn Heights Promenade, something tugged at me. A tiny, trembling instinct I hadn't felt in decades. It started with a glint of plastic. Jake had run back inside the brownstone to grab his portfolio, leaving the engine running. The winter light spilled across the dashboard, and that's when I saw it. A small black pouch peeking out from the side pocket of the driver's door. My heart didn't race. It stopped, then restarted with a heavy, deliberate thud. I reached for it. And there they were. 3 condoms, unopened, neatly lined like he'd placed them there intentionally. For the first 30 seconds, I didn't breathe. My hand shook, but my mind didn't. It was horrifying how calm I felt, like grief had already trained me how to survive the worst. Jake was 24 years younger, handsome, charming, a man who said I made him feel safe. A man who'd slept in my bed the night before and kissed my shoulder like I was the only woman in his universe. Apparently, I wasn't even the only one in his car. He came jogging back, breath visible in the cold air. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" he asked, the same easy smile that had once warmed me. I nodded. Of course. But while he drove toward Manhattan, talking about his client presentation in Midtown, my mind drifted to the kitchen pantry at home, to a small jar of crushed red chili I used for soups. I don't know why the idea hit me then. Maybe grief makes you bold. Maybe betrayal makes you creative. Maybe at 62, you just stop letting people make a fool out of you. Later that afternoon, Jake rushed out for another meeting, leaving his keys on the counter. I stood in our quiet kitchen, the sunlight brushing the marble island, a pot of herbal tea steaming beside my MacBook Air. I looked at the keys, at the chili powder, then back at the keys. It felt ridiculous. It felt petty. It felt appropriate. I walked to the garage, opened the car, and pulled the condoms out again. My fingers were steady now. The anger hadn't risen yet. It was waiting behind the ribs, biding its time. I uncapped the jar. A soft cloud of heat rose into the air. I dipped the tip of my finger, brushed a thin layer onto each condom. Subtle, invisible, deadly in the right context. I didn't smear. I didn't overdo it. I just left enough for fate to handle the rest. Then I placed them back exactly where I found them. When I closed the car door, I chuckled. A small, humorless sound. 62, I whispered. And still learning tricks. Right then, my iPhone buzzed. Maya, my best friend and neighbor, was FaceTiming me. The moment she saw my expression, she narrowed her eyes. "Girl, what did you do?" "Nothing illegal," I said. "That's not comforting." I shrugged. "Let's just say karma's about to get a little spicy." Maya burst out laughing so hard she had to adjust her glasses. "Helen, you can't." "Actually, no. At this point, yes, you can." But underneath the humor, her voice softened. "You okay?" I wasn't. Not really, but I nodded anyway. "I just need the truth," I murmured. "Whatever it costs." And as the garage lights flickered above me, as a chill swept through the air, I felt something in my chest shift, an old wound reopening, but this time with fire behind it. This was the moment everything began. Jake came home late that evening, too late for someone who claimed his meeting ended at 5. I was sitting by the window of our brownstone, reading on my Kindle, though I hadn't processed a single word of the book. Every sound outside made me lift my head. Every pair of headlights made my stomach tighten. At 8:46 p.m., his Mercedes finally pulled into the driveway. He walked in smelling faintly of eucalyptus lotion, something he'd never worn before. He leaned down, kissed my cheek, and winced like the air stung him. It was the first sign. A small, sharp twitch he tried to hide. "Long day?" I asked. "You know clients?" he said, tossing his coat over the chair. Talk. His coat slid off and fell open, and that's when a small white slip drifted out of the pocket, landing silently on the hardwood floor. He didn't notice. He was too busy complaining vaguely about market volatility and investor nerves, phrases he used when he didn't want to explain anything. I picked up the slip. At first glance, it looked like a simple purchase receipt. Then my eyes caught the name. Fifth Avenue Boutique, 3:17 p.m. 2 iced lattes. 1 Tiffany blue gift bag. My heart squeezed. Tiffany. Jake had never bought me anything from Tiffany. Not once in our 4 years together. I folded the receipt and placed it on the marble island. "You were on Fifth Avenue today?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He paused. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Oh, traffic detour, he said. Took the wrong turn. To get coffee? Yeah, client wanted one. Funny how the lie didn't even have the decency to sweat. I made us pasta for dinner. Jake took a bite and winced again, almost dropping the fork. You okay? I asked. Must be a rash, he muttered. Skin feels irritated. I hid a smile behind my wine glass, not gloating, just observing. The chili was doing its work. After he went to shower, I slipped into the living room with my MacBook Air. Maya FaceTimed me again, her hair in rollers this time. Update me before my scalp dries out, she demanded. I held up the Tiffany receipt, her eyes widened. He bought jewelry? For who? Not me. Well, she said, shifting her rollers like crown jewels, I hope she enjoys hospital-grade ointment for what's coming. I snorted despite myself. Then, as if the universe wanted to thicken the plot, Jake's phone, left charging in the kitchen, lit up. Not unlocked, just a preview. A message banner from a contact saved only as S, a red heart emoji at the end. My fingers curled against my palm. The kind of anger that's cold, not loud. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. The truth was slowly circling on its own. Jake emerged from the shower minutes later with a towel around his waist, visibly uncomfortable. Do we have aloe? He asked, walking stiffly. In the hall cabinet, I replied. He limped out of the bathroom. Not walked. Limped. I kept my face neutral, but inside me something cracked open. Not heartbreak, not yet. More like a silent door swinging wide, letting in cold air and clarity. He was lying. He was cheating. And now, his body was betraying him exactly the way he had betrayed me. When he finally fell asleep, face down, legs slightly apart like he'd wrestled a cactus, I stepped out onto the balcony. Brooklyn Heights was silent, glowing under soft yellow streetlights. The Manhattan skyline shimmered across the river, distant and untouchable. I wrapped my robe tighter around myself. I'm not crazy, I whispered into the night. I'm not imagining this. The wind carried my words away, but I felt them settle inside me like truths I'd ignored for too long. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I start gathering proof. This time, no young charmer would trick a grown woman into giving him her heart or her money without consequences. The next day, I dressed with a steadiness that felt foreign. Gray cashmere sweater, black slacks, hair pinned neatly. 62 or not, I refused to play the role of a clueless older wife who needed permission to question her own reality. I tucked my iPhone into my purse, slipped my MacBook Air inside, and headed out before Jake woke. If I wanted truth, I couldn't wait for it to come to me. I had to go find it. Maya insisted on coming along. You shouldn't stalk a man alone, she said, sliding into the passenger seat like we were about to commit a federal offense. We're not stalking, I corrected. We're truth collecting, she replied, fastening her seatbelt with dramatic flair. Using the timestamps from the Tiffany receipt and the iced lattes, I created a loose map of Jake's movements. Fifth Avenue, Midtown, and a location that kept popping up on his credit card statements over the last 3 weeks, the Plaza Hotel. Not a cheap place for meetings. We parked near Central Park South, blending into the late morning bustle. Wealthy couples stepped out of taxis, tourists snapped photos, doormen in immaculate uniforms opened gold-trimmed doors with practiced elegance. My heart beat so hard, I thought it might echo off the marble walls. Ready? Maya whispered. No, I said truthfully. Let's go. Inside, the plaza was everything the world imagined. Gilded ceilings, people in tailored coats, the smell of expensive perfume hovering in the air. Maya nudged me. Imagine catching your husband cheating somewhere cheaper, she muttered. At least betrayal has taste. I would have laughed if my chest weren't so tight. We didn't approach the front desk. That would be reckless. Instead, we sat in the adjacent cafe, where we had a direct view of the elevators. I ordered a simple tea. Maya got a cappuccino shaped like a swan, because of course she did. At 11:22 a.m., the elevator dinged. Jake stepped out, not alone. A woman followed him. Long caramel hair, slim frame, fitted cream coat, and a Tiffany shopping bag swinging at her wrist. She tapped his arm, laughing softly, then adjusted his collar like she'd done it 100 times. I felt a physical sting behind my ribs. That's her, Maya whispered. The S from your phone preview. I didn't cry. Not yet, but my throat burned. Jake and the woman headed toward the lobby entrance. I lowered my head just enough so he couldn't see my face. They walked out, linked arms, and disappeared into the crisp Manhattan daylight. For a moment, everything blurred. The betrayal, the humiliation, the years I spent convincing myself that age didn't make me unworthy of being loved again. Maya squeezed my hand. "Let's take a breather," she murmured. "Bathroom, now." The women's restroom was quiet, warm, softly lit with gold sconces. I stared at myself in the mirror, my lipstick untouched, my hair neat, my eyes glistening but dry. "He didn't cheat because you're older," Maya said gently. "He cheated because he's selfish." I pressed my fingertips to the marble counter. "My first husband adored me until the day he died," I whispered. I thought, maybe I could have that kind of loyalty twice in one lifetime. "You still can," she said, "just not with him." A single tear fell. One. I wiped it away quickly. Then my iPhone buzzed. A message from Attorney Carter. "I reviewed your prenup. If infidelity is proven, financial protection swings in your favor." A spark ignited in me. Not anger, not vengeance. Just clarity. I lifted my chin. "We're done crying," I said. "It's time to document." We walked out of the bathroom, and as we passed the lobby, I noticed a small security placard. "CCTV in use for guest safety." A trail, a breadcrumb, a quiet promise that truth leaves footprints. And I intended to follow every single one. Jake didn't return home until almost midnight. I was sitting on the sofa with a blanket over my lap, the living room lit only by the soft glow of a floor lamp. My MacBook Air rested open beside me, but I hadn't been working. I'd just been waiting, calm, steady, too quiet for my own thoughts. The moment he stepped inside, I knew the chili had done far more than bruise his pride. He walked like each step was a negotiation with pain. "Rough night?" I asked, keeping my tone mild, courteous, almost sweet. Jake froze for half a breath. He wasn't sure whether I was asking or accusing. "Just chafing," he muttered. "New laundry detergent, maybe." A ridiculous lie. And not even a good one. He sat gingerly on the edge of the couch, legs slightly apart, shifting like the fabric of his pants was betraying him. His face tightened around the mouth, the way men look when they want to appear stoic, but secretly want to scream. I leaned forward. "Detergent doesn't cause," he swallowed. "Hard." "I'm fine, Helen." I nodded slowly, watching him flinch every time he moved. Under different circumstances, maybe I would have felt sympathy. But the memory of him walking out of the plaza arm in arm with that woman hardened something inside me. Still, I wasn't here to play detective with clever one-liners. I needed facts. Proof. Patterns. "Did your meeting go well?" I asked casually. He looked away. "What meeting?" There it was, the smallest crack in his story. "You said you had a late meeting," I reminded him gently. "Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one. It was fine." He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting, searching for somewhere safe to land. My gaze drifted to the arm of the sofa where he'd tossed his jacket. Something inside the pocket was bulging. I pretended not to notice. Jake cleared his throat. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." "Of course," I said. "There's a low in the hall cabinet." The way he stiffened told me everything. He knew his skin was on fire, and he had no explanation he could safely offer. When he left the room, I reached for his jacket. I didn't rifle through everything. That wasn't my style. But the pocket with the bulge? That was practically an invitation. Inside was a crumpled pharmacy bag. Receipt timestamp, 6:41 p.m. Item purchased, hydrocortisone ointment. My breath stilled. He hadn't even made it through date night without seeking medical mercy. I placed the bag back exactly where it had been and sat down quietly, letting the information settle into place like puzzle pieces snapping together. A man doesn't stop for ointment on the way home from a business meeting. He stops for ointment because something unexpected happened. Something he couldn't explain. Something he deserved. The next morning, the sun filtered in through the curtains, and I found Jake at the kitchen counter, hunched over his iPhone, typing quickly. When he noticed me, he locked the screen instantly, too fast to be normal. "Morning," he said, forcing a smile. "Morning," I replied, pouring myself coffee. He reached for his mug, overextended, and winced so hard he almost dropped it. "You should get that checked," I said kindly. "It's getting better," he insisted. He was lying. I could see it in his eyes, his posture, the way he guarded himself. Then, unexpectedly, his phone buzzed. A preview lit up the screen again. "Miss you already." My chest tightened, not from shock had passed, but from certainty. His excuses were piling up faster than he could manage them, and I knew the next step wasn't confrontation. It was preparation. I opened my laptop, sipping my coffee, pretending my heart wasn't breaking in slow motion as I began organizing every piece of evidence, from the condoms, the Tiffany receipt, the hotel sightings, to the ointment bag now sitting silently in his coat. Jake wasn't just cheating, he was sloppy. And that kind of carelessness had consequences, sooner than he expected. I've always believed that betrayal doesn't begin with a kiss or a lie. It begins with numbers. Numbers don't know how to perform. They don't blush, they don't deny. They simply reveal. That morning, after Jake left for physical therapy, a new excuse he invented because of course his mysterious rash suddenly needed treatment, I sat at the dining table with my MacBook Air. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the antique clock I inherited from my first husband. The stillness felt symbolic, like the universe telling me to pay attention. I opened my banking portal, then Jake's shared credit card account. Then the statements. The moment the spreadsheet loaded, my breath hitched. There were charges I'd missed before. Tiny ones, scattered like breadcrumbs. $42 at a midtown cafe I'd never heard of. $78 at a boutique spa. $119 at a wine bar known for private booths. $356 at a wellness clinic. The irony wasn't lost on me. But the real blow came next. A $2,900 charge labeled Hale PR Consulting Strategy Package. My fingers froze above the trackpad. Hale, Sabrina Hale, the woman from the plaza, the S on Jake's phone, the one wearing the Tiffany bag like it was a trophy. I pressed my hand to my stomach, steadying myself. Not because of the money, though $2,900 wasn't pocket change, but because Jake had used our joint account to impress a woman who wasn't even discreet. He wasn't just cheating emotionally or physically, he was cheating financially. That was the kind of betrayal people went to court for. 30 minutes later, Maya barged into the house like she owned it. He texted 911. What happened? Did the man's chili parts fall off? Worse, I said, turning the laptop toward her. She leaned in. Her eyes bulged so dramatically I thought her lashes might fall into the keyboard. Oh, honey, she breathed. He is not just stupid, he is criminally stupid. I swallowed a dry laugh. Then she squinted at the screen. What's this? 4 separate transfers to an account ending in 8037, I said. And that's not mine. We exchanged a long look. Maya wasn't a dramatic person by accident. She'd lost her retirement funds once because of an ex-husband's gambling. She knew the signs of financial manipulation better than anyone. Helen, she said softly, you need a lawyer. I already contacted one. Who? Attorney Lauren Carter. Maya slapped the table like she'd just won bingo. Good, she's a shark in pearls. If anyone can corner Jake legally, she can do it while sipping a latte. I smiled weakly. I didn't want this to be real. It is real, Maya said, squeezing my hand, but that doesn't mean it has to break you. We headed to Attorney Carter's office that afternoon. No confrontation with Jake yet. Not until we knew exactly what we were dealing with. The legal building on Court Street was polished, modern, with tall glass windows that reflected the Brooklyn skyline. Carter greeted us herself. A poised woman in her early 50s, silk blouse, Cartier pen clipped to her portfolio. Her presence alone felt like strategy. She reviewed the documents quietly, her brows lifting slightly as she turned each page. Finally, she looked at me. Helen, I'm going to speak plainly, she said. Your husband is siphoning money. He's doing it clumsily, but he's doing it. I nodded, throat tight. And if we establish intent, she continued, tapping the screen, combined with infidelity, the prenup swings overwhelmingly in your favor. You won't lose your assets. He will. Maya grinned approvingly. Told you. Shark in pearls. But Carter wasn't smiling. However, she said, folding her hands, I need one more thing from you. My heart steadied. What? Proof that the relationship with Miss Hale is ongoing and collaborative. If we can connect her to the financial transfers, everything changes. A strange calm washed over me. I had seen them together, I had the receipts. And Jake's body, burning, uncomfortable, guilty, had already begun confessing without words. I'll get it, I said quietly, and I meant it. Attorney Carter didn't want me confronting Jake yet. Information first, she'd said, her Cartier pen ticking softly against her notebook. Emotion later. But if I wanted Jake to expose himself, I needed him relaxed, comfortable, confident he was still in control. So that evening, I told him we had dinner reservations. Dinner? He repeated, wincing as he shifted his weight in the kitchen. Where? The River Cafe, I replied smoothly. He blinked, surprised, maybe impressed. A man like Jake enjoyed luxury the way a child enjoys magic tricks, with delight and entitlement. That's quite a place for a Tuesday night, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I thought we could reconnect, I said gently. He smiled, nervous but intrigued by the idea of being treated like a prize instead of a suspect. Sure, that sounds nice. He didn't know I was inviting him into the lion's den. Or perhaps into the wolf's mouth, mine. The River Cafe glittered along the Brooklyn waterfront, its windows casting warm reflections over the East River. Inside, soft jazz hummed, the Manhattan skyline glowed like a jeweled crown in the distance. Every table was adorned with white linens and fresh flowers, each petal more perfect than the last. Jake looked around with a sort of reverent awe. I can't believe you got a reservation here. I called early, I said. I hadn't, Attorney Carter had. We were seated by a window, the city shimmering like a promise behind us. Jake shifted in his seat, still tender from the chili's angry aftermath, and tried to appear collected. I ordered wine, he ordered sparkling water. Stomach's still weird, he muttered. Of course it was. We talked lightly at first about weather, neighbors, a new art exhibit. Then, slowly, I guided the conversation where it needed to go. Jake, I said softly, tracing the stem of my glass, I was thinking, maybe we should invest together. Something new, something exciting. His eyes lit up instantly. Investment? Like what? I pretended to hesitate. I've been thinking about selling that painting in my studio. The one worth, well, you know. The one from your first husband's collection? He asked, leaning forward. Yes. His pupils flared just slightly, a flicker of greed he tried to mask with admiration. That could give us a lot of capital, he said. Oh, I know. I smiled. We could build something together. He took the bait so quickly it was almost disappointing. I actually have a business project in the works, he said eagerly. A startup idea. I could show you the details, maybe later tonight. Really? I asked, voice light, curious. Truth was, I already knew about his project. The fake invoices, the suspicious PR consulting, the account ending in ADU37. But I needed him to talk. Jake reached into his coat and pulled out his prized Mont Blanc pen, the same one he used when he wanted to feel important. He clicked it open dramatically and scribbled numbers on the corner of a napkin. This is what the future could look like for us, he said. I watched him sign his initials at the bottom of his little projection. What he didn't notice was the small security camera above us. Its lens pointed directly toward our table. Perfect. He'd placed himself, willingly, into recorded evidence. When we finished dinner, Jake stood up quickly, forgetting his condition. He inhaled sharply, grabbing the table for balance. You okay? I asked gently. Fine, he hissed through clenched teeth, just irritated. Irritation was becoming his entire personality. Outside, the night air was cool, crisp, the skyline shimmered behind us as we walked toward the valet. Jake slipped his arm around my shoulders, not affection, but desperation. Thank you, he murmured, for believing in me. I looked up at him, offering a soft, unreadable smile. Oh, Jake, I said quietly, you have no idea what I believe. What I believed now wasn't in his innocence. It was in justice. And justice, like chili, had a way of burning exactly where it needed to. Justice doesn't arrive with sirens. It begins quietly, like the soft click of a camera, the whisper of a pen gliding across a page, or the tightening in your stomach when the truth is finally ready to surface. The morning after our dinner at the River Cafe, I woke earlier than usual. Jake was still asleep, sprawled across the bed like a man recovering from both guilt and chili. He looked peaceful, too peaceful for someone who had woven so many lies in so few days. I stepped out onto the balcony with a cup of herbal tea. Brooklyn Heights was hushed, draped in silver dawn. The Manhattan skyline glowed faintly in the distance, and for the first time in weeks I felt something close to clarity. It was time. I sent a message to Attorney Carter. I have what you asked for. When can we meet? Her reply came within minutes. Come in today. We'll move forward. At 11 a.m., Maya drove me to Carter's office. Jake thought I was meeting an old friend for brunch, an easy lie to sell. He was in the middle of icing his irritated skin and watching motivational videos on his iPhone, searching for hope in all the wrong places. Carter greeted us with her usual calm precision. Let's see the evidence, she said, gesturing to the conference room table. I laid everything out. Photos of Jake and Sabrina at the plaza, the Tiffany receipt, the pharmacy bag with hydrocortisone, his napkin business projection signed with his Mont Blanc pen, credit card statements showing transfers to Hale PR, screenshots of the text previews from S, a short video clip from the River Cafe security camera Carter had requested. She examined each piece with silent intensity. Finally, she leaned back and steepled her fingers. "Helen," she said, "this is more than enough to move forward. Infidelity, financial misconduct, misuse of joint funds, this is a pattern." Maya crossed her arms triumphantly. "Told you he was a walking lawsuit," Carter continued. "The next step is filing a petition to freeze any accounts he may try to drain once he realizes the walls are closing in. Judges take asset protection seriously in cases like yours." A soft breath escaped me. Not relief, not victory. Just acknowledgement, like the sound your soul makes when it has finally stopped pretending. "But we need one more thing," Carter said. "A recorded admission, direct or indirect, something that ties him to Ms. Hale and the financial transfers." "I can get that," I said immediately. Maya blinked. "How? Torture him with chili again?" Carter stifled a smile. "No torture, just conversation." That afternoon, I returned home to find Jake in the kitchen munching on crackers like a wounded animal. He perked up the moment I entered. "How was brunch?" he asked. "Good," I replied, setting my Starbucks cup on the counter. "Actually, I was thinking, we should talk finances." His shoulders stiffened. "Finances?" he repeated. "Yes, you mentioned a startup project last night. I'd like to hear more about it. If we're going to invest together, I want transparency." The word transparency made him twitch. "Well," he said, straightening, "it's still in early development. Sabrina, my consultant, she's helping with strategy." There it was, a slip, the truth trying to escape the prison he built around it. I kept my expression neutral. "Sabrina Hale?" He froze. For a long moment, he didn't breathe. Then he forced a laugh. You know her name?" "I know more than her name." My voice was soft, too soft. Jake swallowed. "Helen, my Apple Watch vibrated gently on my wrist. The recording app was running. Noah had taught me how to set it up discreetly." Jake inhaled shakily. "Look, things got complicated. Sabrina and I." There it was, the admission, raw, unedited, damning, just like Carter needed. That evening, I emailed the audio file to Attorney Carter with trembling hands. Maya called 2 minutes later. "Well," she demanded. "It's done," I whispered. He admitted it. She exhaled so loudly I thought her phone speaker might crack. "You brave, brilliant woman." I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. But beneath the fatigue was something else, something steady and rising. Justice wasn't loud, but it was coming. And Jake had no idea how close it was. The next morning, Brooklyn woke up under a pale gold sky, the kind that makes the waterfront look like brushed metal. I sat at the dining table sipping warm tea, my Apple Watch buzzing every few minutes with messages from Attorney Carter. "Your audio file is admissible. Freeze notice being drafted. Next step, controlled confrontation." Controlled confrontation. The phrase tasted cold and metallic on my tongue, but I knew it was necessary. Jake needed to reveal just enough of himself for the law to finish the job. At 10 a.m., he walked into the kitchen looking restless, shoulders tense, eyes darting everywhere except at me. His skin was less angry looking than before, but he still moved gingerly, every shift reminding him that lies had consequences. "Helen, we need to talk," he said. I set my cup down slowly. "About what?" He hesitated. "About us. Us." As if there was still an us to rescue. He rubbed the back of his neck, the same nervous tick he always had when cornered. "Let's go for a walk in Central Park. Somewhere quiet." Quiet meant privacy. Privacy meant manipulation. But privacy could also mean opportunity. "All right," I said evenly. Central Park was crisp and almost cinematic, sunlight filtering through the trees, the air filled with distant laughter, and the rustle of joggers passing by. Jake chose Bethesda Terrace, a place beautiful enough to disguise ugly conversations. The fountain sparkled behind him, but his expression was tight, strained. "Helen," he began, "things have been messy. I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I repeated softly. He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean for things with Sabrina to go that far." "Ugh." He said her name again, this time without me prompting. I leaned against the stone railing, keeping my voice calm. "How far did it go, Jake?" He exhaled shakily. "We were seeing each other. It wasn't serious, more like comfort." I was stressed, overwhelmed. I held up a hand. Jake, stop. Affairs don't grow out of stress, they grow out of decisions. He winced. I know that now. He didn't know the real reason I'd agreed to this walk. My Apple Watch was recording again, and behind a nearby column, Maya stood pretending to photograph the architecture. She kept her distance, but she was within sight, just in case Jake tried to twist the narrative later. Jake stepped closer. But we can fix this. Let's salvage our marriage. We can rebuild everything together. Everything? I echoed. He nodded quickly. Yes, the finances, the investments, everything. There it was, the part he really cared about. I tilted my head. Jake, did you transfer money to Sabrina? He froze, his jaw clenched. I paid for her services. She's a consultant. It was professional. And the nights at the plaza? Professional? My voice was quiet, not sharp. He stammered. She needed guidance. Maya snorted loudly from behind the pillar. Jake jerked, startled. I ignored the interruption. Jake, were you planning to ask me to sell my first husband's painting so you could put the money into your startup? His cheeks flushed. He couldn't hide the truth now, not with the weight of his own guilt pressing against him. I thought, if we invested together, maybe things wouldn't fall apart, he whispered. So you wanted my money, I said. No, I wanted us to grow together. That's not growth, I replied. That's exploitation. He swallowed, anguish flickering across his face. Helen, I don't want to lose everything. You already have, I said gently. For the first time, truth washed over him, cold and undeniable. His shoulders sagged, his eyes dimmed, his voice cracked. Please, just give me a chance. I stepped back, letting the sun fall between us like a line he could never cross again. Jake, I whispered, some chances don't come twice. When we left the park, my watch buzzed. A message from Attorney Carter. This is enough. Prepare for the next step. I inhaled deeply, feeling something in my chest shift. A release, a quiet victory, a distant ache. Justice wasn't loud, but it was closer than ever. Justice didn't break like a wave. It arrived like frost, quiet, creeping, unstoppable. 2 days after our conversation in Central Park, I was in the kitchen pouring coffee when the doorbell rang. Jake was in the living room, half reclined on the sofa, scrolling through his iPhone, probably crafting another desperate plan to keep me emotionally tethered and financially blind. Expecting someone? He called. No, I said. I opened the door. 2 officers stood there, calm, professional, their badges catching the morning light. Behind them was Attorney Carter, crisp in a navy blazer, the wind tugging at her hair like the city itself was urging her forward. Jake stiffened, rising slowly, a hand pressing instinctively to the place the chili had once punished him. What's going on? He asked, voice tight. Jacob Collins? One officer said. Yes, you're being detained for questioning related to financial misappropriation and fraud involving joint marital assets. Jake's eyes flew wide. What? No, this is a mistake. Helen? I stood still, not cold, not triumphant, just done. He reached toward me, but the officers stepped between us. Sir, hands where we can see them. What is happening? He demanded. I didn't do anything illegal. Carter stepped forward, calm as marble. Mr. Collins, we have the credit card transfers, your written projections, the consulting invoices, and proof that you attempted to redirect funds belonging to Mrs. Monroe. Jake's jaw dropped open. His panic rose fast, like watching someone trying to outrun their own shadow. This is her money, he sputtered. She said she wanted us to invest together. I met his eyes and spoke softly. I said we should talk about it. I didn't say yes, and you'd already spent thousands before I even knew it existed. His face crumpled. Helen, please, don't do this. I didn't do anything, I said. You did. The officers guided him toward the door. He resisted until they warned him again, and then the fight left him all at once. He sagged like a man deflated. On the threshold, he turned back. Sabrina told me you'd ruin everything, he choked. That name, spoken in my house, with such desperation, landed like a final insult. Carter lifted her folder. She has already been contacted. She's cooperating. Jake flinched as if struck. He didn't know betrayal could happen to him too, and that was the bitter poetry of it. The hearing took place that same afternoon, a temporary freeze order, presentation of preliminary evidence. Jake sat across the courtroom, pale, eyes darting, fingers twisting a loose thread on his sleeve. When the judge asked him to explain the transfers, he stammered. When asked about Sabrina, he lied. When confronted with the recordings, he cracked. He didn't confess dramatically. He just deflated, like a balloon slowly losing air. Carter presented everything with surgical clarity, her Cartier pen tapping softly as she spoke. "Mrs. Monroe is not seeking vengeance," she said firmly. "She is seeking protection. Her husband exploited her trust and jeopardized her financial security." Jake's lawyer objected, but weakly. Evidence didn't care about performance. The judge issued the order. Freeze on all accounts Jake accessed. Restrictions on asset movement. Immediate review of misappropriated funds. Prenup clause triggered. Infidelity plus financial misconduct equals forfeiture of spousal rights. Jake's shoulders collapsed. As we left the courtroom, he called after me. "Helen, please, don't leave me like this." I turned, steady as the marble floor beneath us. "You left us first," I said quietly, "long before today." His eyes filled, not with remorse but with fear. That was when I finally understood. Some men don't fear losing love, they fear losing access. Outside the courthouse, the sky was a clean winter blue. Maya wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "That," she said, "was justice served with a side of elegance." I exhaled, the weight easing. Not gone, but shifting. Attorney Carter handed me a folder. "Next up is final proceedings. You've already done the hard part." I looked toward the skyline. It shimmered, strong, bright, untouchable. For the first time in a long while, I felt the shape of a future that belonged only to me. 3 weeks passed after the emergency hearing. 3 quiet, steady weeks where the chaos of Jake's downfall no longer filled every corner of my life. Brooklyn moved around me like a living tide. Children rushing to school, couples walking dogs, the city humming with its usual mixture of ambition and exhaustion. And there I was, 62, newly untangled from a man who had nearly rewritten my entire future without my consent. Healing didn't happen in dramatic bursts. It came in small, deliberate choices. The first choice was moving back into my art studio. The place smelled of oil paint and cedar wood, sunlight pooling along the floors like liquid gold. For months, I'd avoided it, too afraid to feel the ghosts of my past expectations. But now, standing in the warm light, I felt something settle inside me. It was the first time in a long while that the room belonged to me again. I unwrapped my brushes, arranged my paints, and opened the windows. New York air rushed in, cold, clean, alive. I dipped my brush into color and let the canvas take what it wanted. Not perfection, not beauty. Just truth. It felt like breathing. One afternoon, Noah, my 19-year-old grandson, visited with 2 steaming cups of Starbucks hot chocolate. He sat beside me on the studio floor, legs stretched long, sneakers untied. "You seem lighter," he said. "I feel lighter," I admitted. Like someone finally set down a suitcase I didn't realize I'd been dragging. He smiled. "Grandma, you didn't just survive something. You ended something that wasn't worthy of you." His words hit deeper than he knew. Noah tugged on his Apple Watch, syncing a music playlist to the studio speakers, a soft instrumental track. "You know," he added, "you always taught me to choose people who choose me back. You finally took your own advice." I pulled him into a hug. His warmth, his sincerity, those were the anchors I'd been missing. Meanwhile, Jake's situation unraveled quickly. Attorney Carter kept me updated with surgical calm. Sabrina had cooperated fully. Jake's accounts remained frozen. His fraudulent transfers were under full investigation. And the prenup clause had been officially activated, leaving him with nothing but the belongings he'd come into the marriage with. His lawyer requested a meeting. I declined. If Jake wanted closure, he could search for it in the mirror. Yet, oddly, I didn't feel vindictive anymore. Betrayal burned hot, justice burned slow. But healing? Healing was cool, gentle, patient. A week later, Maya dragged me to a weekend art class in Manhattan. "To keep your hands busy and your heart open," she said. I expected it to be silly, a distraction at best. Instead, I met someone. His name was Robert Hale, a retired architect in his late 60s, sharp eyes, warm laugh, steady posture. He wasn't related to Sabrina. Hale was simply a common name. When he introduced himself, I nearly laughed at the coincidence. Robert noticed the small tremor in my hands as I tried molding clay. "Haven't done this in a while?" he asked kindly. "Not with a clear mind," I said. He smiled gently. "Then you're in the perfect place to start." We worked side by side for 2 hours, talking about architecture, travel, art, the gentle fear of starting over, at an age when the world expects you to settle. When class ended, he walked me out into the afternoon sunlight. "If you ever want company for a museum day," he said, "I'd be honored." For the first time in years, my heart fluttered, not with desperation, but with possibility. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Some doors deserve to stay half open. That night in my studio, I painted a single bright stroke across the canvas, bold, intentional, alive. Not for Jake, not for revenge, not even for the past, for me, for the woman I had finally chosen to become. Spring arrived quietly in New York, the kind of soft season that slips into your life before you even notice the air has changed. One morning, I walked down the steps of my brownstone with a warm cup of tea and felt the gentle breeze brush my cheek, almost like a greeting. Across the street, cherry blossoms were opening in slow, careful pinks. Healing had a way of blooming, just like that. I returned to my studio later that afternoon. The windows were cracked open, sunlight spilling across the wooden floors. My newest canvas stood in the center, broad strokes of orange, pale gold, soft lavender. It didn't depict anything recognizable. It simply felt like peace. A knock sounded at the door. Robert stood there, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate from Starbucks, the same drink Noah always brought. "I was in the neighborhood," he said with a shy smile. "Thought you might like company." For a heartbeat, I hesitated, not from fear, but from gratitude that life still offered second chances. "Come in," I told him. We talked for hours, about architecture, travel, and how strange it feels to begin again at an age when the world expects you to stay the same. When he finally left, he paused at the doorway. "You seem happy here," he said. "I am," I replied, for the first time in a long while. As the door closed behind him, the studio glowed with late afternoon light. I picked up my brush again and let color meet canvas without hesitation. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that was enough.